Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the kickoff webinar in NEHA's Emerging Trends in Food Safety webinar series. Today, we'll be hearing all about the NEHA FDA Retail Flexible Funding Model Grant Program. My name is Laura Wilde, and I'm the Senior Program Analyst in Food Safety for the National Environmental Health Association, and I'm joined by my colleague, Taryn Laird, Public Health Communications Specialist. It is our pleasure to facilitate today's webinar. Please note this webinar is being recorded. If you are not okay with this being recorded, you may disconnect at this time. We are pleased to have you join us for our month-long celebration of National Food Safety Education Month. We worked very hard to provide our members and the environmental health community at large with educational resources and tools to support the environmental health workforce. To celebrate this month, we are hosting free webinars every Tuesday on emerging trends in food safety. We also want to highlight the outstanding work of our food safety professionals throughout the month. These individuals and groups have worked tirelessly to safeguard the food we eat. So in order to recognize a food safety hero, please tell us about them and we will shout their praises via the Food Safety Heroes blog. We'll put these links in the chat for your convenience and we hope you navigate over to our sites to learn more. This is a free webinar and it is proudly hosted by the National Environmental Health Association. If you're not already a member, we hope you'll consider joining our vast network of environmental health professionals. We provide opportunities for training and education and have some of the most well-respected credentials in the industry. With our main office in Denver, Colorado, and our second office in Washington, D.C., we make networking and connections easy. We are a group of almost 7,000 environmental health professionals, and we hope you consider joining us if you're not already a member. Visit our website at neha.org for more information on membership, education, and credentialing, and of course, networking. A bit of housekeeping before we hear from our speakers. All attendees are in listen-only mode, and as a reminder, this webinar is being recorded. Throughout the discussion, you may submit any questions you have in the Q&A box, and we will do our best to answer as many questions as we can after we hear from the speakers. I'm pleased to introduce our panelists today. Let's learn a little bit about them before we dive in. Dr. Sharon Unkart began her career as an environmental scientist, first for EPA in the Air Quality Division, then for a small private consulting firm where she conducted phase 1 and 2 environmental site assessments, remediated underground storage tanks, handled non-friable asbestos abatement, and managed environmental resource management projects. From there, she went on to get her master's in curriculum and instruction with an emphasis in secondary science education. After teaching K-12 students for a few years, she moved on to teaching adults, eventually earning her doctorate in adult and continuing education. She is now the Associate Director for the Entrepreneurial Zone, the department within the National Environmental Health Association that produces adult learning materials such as asynchronous online courses, books, and other study materials in support of NEHA's certificate and credentialing programs. She also serves as the instructional coach for NEHA's instructors who, in partnership with FDA, teach many of the courses such as special processes at retail and plan review. She is an avid organic gardener, passionate environmentalist, and a chicken whisperer. Another speaker we have today is Christl Tate. Christl Tate has been at NEHA for over 20 years, dedicating her career to developing resources that support local public health. Focusing on public-private partnerships and participant-centered learning, she works to develop innovative solutions to environmental health roadblocks. Currently, her work at NEHA focuses on food safety and body art. Christl has a BS in environmental health from Colorado State University. After spending more than 2 decades directing nonprofit organizations in his young life and working for state governments as the Director of Agriculture Emergency Preparedness with the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, Chief Operating Officer, Volunteer Florida, Art Johnstone formed grant partners with the goal of assisting national associations and nonprofits with the acquisition and management of grant funding. Since 2008, he and his team have developed partner organizations, have helped partner organizations acquire more than $101 million in federal grant funding. In addition to his work in grant management, Art has also spent the last 15 years teaching adult education courses for the International Food Protection Training Institute, the National Center for Biomedical Research and Training, and the National Environmental Health Association, and several other national partners. A 1988 graduate of Miami University, Ohio, Art earned a Bachelor of Science in Biological Science Education. He and his wife, Carol, live in Tallahassee, Florida, with their 6 children. Welcome, speakers, and I thank you so much for joining us today to discuss this important topic. Mr. Johnstone, I will pass it to you. The floor is now yours.
All right, and welcome everyone. And I just want to mention, as I'm pulling my PowerPoint up, I am going to have Mike Turner help me with the second part of my presentation today. So you'll not only hear from me, but from Mike Turner as well. We are going to talk about the retail flexible funding model, you're also going to hear from the other panelists about some of the other training opportunities and development going on at NEHA. But we will begin and end talking about the retail flexible funding model, again, which opened for registration just today. And that's the first message. If you want to register for this new program, it is brand new. It picks up on some of the past FDA funding programs, but it's a whole new portal, whole new system. You will have to register. So if you go to neha.org and up near the top of the screen, you look for retail grants, you can click on that. There's a main site and that's how you register. And again, you can start that today. And then a week from tomorrow, we will open for applications. We'll begin accepting applications on September 9, and I'll talk just a little bit more about what that looks like in just a moment. So if you are to go to neha.org/retail grants, this is what will greet you. A lot of information. There's a left menu with detailed information, but for right now, the most important thing is there's a big golden button that you can click to register for the grant program portal. It really takes about 5 minutes to register. And once you register, you won't get your credentials until the 9th or just before that. But you will get those credentials in just a few days. So feel free to register and again, poke around the site and check out all the information there. So I know a lot of you have already heard FDA and NEHA presentations on the retail flexible funding model grant program. So I'm not going to cover a lot of the details there. There are presentations on the NEHA website, and FDA has some that are floating around there as well. But I'll just summarize what the overall program does. And then today we're going to focus on one of the types of grant applications, the training, staff development, and program standards engagement optional add-on grant. So as you probably know, if you've heard a presentation, there's 2 base grants. Everybody has to apply for one of the 2 base grants, and then you have 4 different optional add-on grants. And again, the training grant, which I'll abbreviate it since it has such a long title, I'll call it the training grant, is one of the 4 optional add-on grants. If you want to apply for this program, there are a few simple things you need to do. Number 1 is enroll in the Voluntary National Retail Food Regulatory Program Standards. What we'll call that from here on out, the retail program standards. Many folks are already registered for that, but if you're not registered, you can get that done in about a day. And if you go to the NEHA website, you can click on Action 1 on the left, and it'll walk you through enrollment, which is going to be contacting your FDA retail specialist and filling out a form, but really easy to do. That's the first step and really the only mandatory prerequisite to apply for grants. Once you're enrolled, you can apply for one of the 2 base grants. And just remember that this is all about achieving and making progress through the retail program standards. This doesn't fund anything and everything. It really helps you work your way through those retail program standards. And the training grant is also really focused on the retail program standards. We'll get into that in just a minute. So there are 2 base grants. There's a development-based grant with 2 different tracks, and there is a maintenance and advancement-based grant. So think about it as 3 tracks, 3 application pathways. Track 1 is for newbies. All you have to be is enrolled to get into track 1, but you've got very limited training opportunities under track 1. All you can really request is attendance at one of the face-to-face self-assessment and verification workshop options. So, and I know Sharon's going to talk about those workshops in a little bit, but in track 1, that's all you can do. So most of you, if you want more training flexibility, if you want more funding, you're going to want to go through track 2, which starts with one of the development-based grants, or track 3, which is the maintenance and advancement-based grant. And to get into either track 2 or track 3, you need a current self-assessment of all 9 standards, and current means it's completed in 2016 or later, and you need a completed comprehensive strategic improvement plan. For most folks, if you don't already have these, you can get them in time to apply for this program. The first one is a little harder. If you don't have a current self-assessment, you don't need funding to do that, but it does take a little work. And you can start at the NEHA site, you can go to the FDA site, but it will take a little bit of work, but NEHA is here to help you. Your FDA retail specialist is here to help you. If you want to get that done quickly, it can be done. But that's the higher bar. The second bar, a completed comprehensive strategic improvement plan. That's really, FDA is really flexible on that. We have guidance on the NEHA website that walks you through how to do that. I think off the top of my head, I think that's action 4 on the NEHA retail standards website. But basically you're using a spreadsheet or another format, and you're just going to link to your self-assessment of all 9 standards, and you're just going to talk about what you're going to do over the next few years to meet as many of those standards as you want to meet, over the near-term time period. There's not a strong requirement of the format. It just has to link to your SA9, and it has to make sense. If you complete that, you upload it to your base grant application, that gets you over that CSIP hurdle. So, and again, we do have a helpline. If you've got more questions about that, you can either email us from or you can call us, and both of those information, all the contact information for the retail flexible funding model team can be found on the NEHA website. So again, most of the training options come through, are for tracks 2 and track 3, and are for folks that have a current self-assessment and a completed strategic improvement plan. So if you qualify again for the program, any of the tracks, everything here, well, most of this is available. Through any of the tracks, you can request up to $7,500 per year for training. And that could be for one staff member going to one training. That could be multiple staff members going to multiple trainings, but there's a max of $7,500 a year. And that goes for track 1, track 2, and track 3. It's for attendance at retail program standards focused trainings. And we'll talk about some of the specific trainings that are likely to get approved very quickly in your application. And then also in tracks 2 and 3, if you are in need of equipment specifically to participate in virtual training or to train up your staff, you can apply some of that $7,500 per year to any equipment you might need. So really flexible, a lot of good options. And again, the first 2 bullets apply to all 3 tracks. The third bullet here about equipment applies to if you apply through track 2 or track 3. So the eligible training offered, you can, there's a lot particularly in 2022, which is the period covered by this first year of the grants. There's a lot of virtual training offered. You don't need to put that in your applications. That's all free. Any of the FDA sponsored training out there, any of the virtual self-assessment and verification audit workshop, that's all free. You don't have to ask for money. But if you want to go to a face-to-face, an in-person self-assessment and verification audit workshop, you can request that through any of the tracks, any of the funding tracks through this program. And if you're in tracks 2 or 3, you can also request attendance at any in-person retail food courses offered by or on behalf of FDA. Some of those courses may be directly offered by FDA. Some are offered through NEHA. Some are offered through AFDO, the Association of Food and Drug Officials. Keep in mind that for 2022, there may not be any in-person FDA-sponsored courses. This is really for the future for 23 and 24. You can attend most of the offerings. All of the offerings, at least I know of at this time, are virtual. But keep that in your head for the future. But you can also, and this is probably more applicable for 2022, you can apply to go to any of the FDA retail food safety seminars using these grants. And there are 5 across the country. They'll be held, I believe they're going to be face-to-face, and they should be in the late summer or early fall 2022. And you can also request funding to attend forums that discuss or deliberate issues directly impacting the FDA food code or the retail program standards. Common venues people are probably going to want to request funding for are the NEHA Annual Educational Conference, the AFDO Annual Educational Conference, the NACHO the NACHO Annual Meeting, CFP when it comes up again in 2023, you can request funding for that. The Food Safety Summit is another one, but again, some of those things that you know about or that you've gone to before that have a specific focus on the food code or retail program standards. And again, remember that in your application, you're really going to want to focus on how you're going to use this training to have your staff really get up to speed and make progress through the retail program standards. That's the whole point of this grant program. Just a couple helpful hints when you're putting your application together. And by the way, later in this presentation, we're going to give you a live demo of what that training application looks like. But when you're actually filling it out yourself, remember to be specific. Don't be general. Don't say, I may go to this, I may go to that. Make a decision and say, I want to go to this course on this date. I want to go to this workshop on this date. Give the location and give the names and titles of staff who will attend. Some people don't like to lock themselves down. I will say, please do lock yourself down. It helps evaluate your application better, but you're not going to be locked in. If you change, if you lose a staff member and you replace them, or if there's a conflict and you can't go to a training you thought you were going to go to, as long as they are the approved, kind of the approved cadre of trainings or list of trainings, you can make substitutions throughout the year by requesting a change. So first hint is be really specific. And the second is, and I've mentioned this already, be ready to focus on how that training will help your jurisdiction make progress in the retail program standards. I'm sending this person with this title and who has this role with my organization to this specific training, and it's going to help us do this and make progress in the retail program standards. If you put that kind of application in, you're going to find that you've got a very high likelihood of getting funding through these training grants. And again, we'll show you a little bit more specific in a bit. Again, the live demonstration's coming up. That's going to be led by Mike Turner. And with that, I'm going to end and I'm going to pass the next part of the presentation on to Christl.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. Thanks, Art. I'm going to just get my screen share up and ready to go. Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. As Laura said, I'm Christl Tate, and I am the manager of training operations and logistics for NEHA. And I am here to provide an overview of some of the course options that you can sign up for. So to start with, what exactly are you signing up for? We just heard Art say that there's a lot of courses that were delivered in person and may be delivered in person in the future, but right now are delivered virtually. And while that definitely involved a lot of changes on NEHA's part and AFDO's part, and definitely FDA's part, it provided us with an opportunity to update content and refocus the delivery. So what does that look like? First of all, adult learners. All of our training is geared towards adult learners. This is not a college course where you are listening in the background to somebody lecture you for an hour. There's lots of activity, engagement, and real life application. Next are our instructors. And while they all are experts in their field that they're training on, they're also trained in delivering information and sharing knowledge in a way that resonates and sticks with you, so you can take it with you and apply it in the field. Cool. Opportunities to connect. We've kind of touched on this already, but networking, I think we can agree that generally in person, it's a little bit easier, but to do it virtually, we factor in and encourage small group discussion and sharing contact information so that when you're in the field after you've attended one of your courses and you come across a situation you've never seen before, and maybe you remember a classmate talking about dealing with that same situation, you're able to reach out to them and find out options for solutions, what worked for them, what didn't work. And it's a great way to build your own network too. So resources, we try and give you as many resources as you can possibly download with the courses, and job aids too. So again, that you can take the knowledge that you've gained and apply it in the field. Last, but definitely not least, is fun. Zoom fatigue, it's real, and fun helps mitigate all of that Zoom fatigue we feel. And having fun impacts all of the items that were just covered, from engagement to networking. If you're enjoying yourself in a course, you're going to remember things and you're going to be able to apply them. And it sure makes 5 or 6 hours go by a lot faster. Okay, now I'm going to go over just a brief overview of some of the courses that are available online. And I am not going to read these lists for you. And I think Taryn's about to put a link for more information into the chat if you'd like to have more detailed information about the courses. The first 2 courses that are up, FD 204 and FD 207. Once we went to virtual delivery and lockdown started, we kind of thought these courses were maybe not going to be in as high as demand, given that there's temporary food events and plan review for retail establishments. But surprise, surprise, these are our most in-demand courses. Whether it's new restaurants wanting to open as things start opening back up, or people just hoping things get back to normal, these are very popular courses. The next 2 courses are ones that our partner AFDO puts on. FD 215 is going to provide you a great base understanding of risk-based inspection. And then you follow that up with FD 218, where you get to build on that base level of knowledge that you already have. These, I think, are a must-have for any inspector, new or seasoned. We can all learn from each other. And that's a great part about retail or virtual delivery of these courses, is we do all learn together. Last, but definitely not least, is our workhorse of a course. It is FD 312 Special Processes. This course covers everything from HACCP, ROP, fermentation, acidification, curing, drying, smoking, and everything in between. If you have special processes in your area, this course is something you're going to want to attend. It's a great course, and you will definitely leave with a lot of resources to prepare you to address special processes in your area. So I hope you enjoyed this sneak peek into the courses, and I look forward to seeing you in a course soon. So Sharon, I'll pass it on to you.
Great, thanks, Christl. Bring up. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about the development of the new self-assessment and verification audit course. As everybody knows, with COVID, we had to take things that used to be face-to-face and move them into a virtual platform, and this was no different. So I'm going to also try to tie it in to the retail flexible funding model as well at the very end, but mostly it's going to be about these courses. So the point of moving everything into a virtual environment was to make sure that everybody got the same content. So it was going to be exactly the same, but different, right? So we have this face-to-face original course that was delivered. And then we've got the one that we're working on. It's not published yet. It's not live. We've just made it through today. As a matter of fact, our first kind of handoff of one of the first standards that we gave as a module, as a course, we're calling them all courses, to FDA today for their review. But the goal of the development of the online course has been to deliver the same content, as compared to the face-to-face course. And the challenge there is that you can't just take something that was created for a face-to-face course and just plop it up online and call it an online course, because it doesn't work that way. There's different tactics to help the information stay sticky, for people to remember, for them to engage. It's as many of you might understand, if you just take a PowerPoint that somebody made and stick it online and try to call it a course, that usually doesn't work, or it's not very effective anyway. So both of the courses, whether it's face-to-face or online, both have the same audience. So we had to make sure that we were still reaching all of the same people. Those folks doing the self-assessments in their jurisdictions, trying to help their jurisdiction meet the standards, all those same people are still going to be taking our courses. But then there were also these secondary audiences of folks who wanted to learn how to be an auditor for verification for other jurisdictions, the RFSs for FDA, the retail food specialists who want to learn more about the content. We had this kind of secondary audience as well that we still need to make sure that we reach. So the content between the two, like I said, face-to-face and the virtual course, are exactly the same. We've got the administrative and the introductory and administrative module that kind of kicks it off for everything. So for the online course, that's going to be a mandatory module that everybody has to do, no matter which standard they're trying to meet. And then each individual of the 9 standards is going to have its own. I called it a module here. I should call it a course. We've just changed our nomenclature because these are not short. They're not short. They're not like a module. Each standard is going to stand alone as its own course because they are long. But so when you get into path lore, which is where it's going to live, you'll see, you'll have this kind of requirement that you do this introductory and administrative piece, and then you'll get to choose the different standards, whichever ones you want to do. So in a face-to-face environment, right, you've got folks standing up at the front of the room. They're instructors. They've got PowerPoint slides. You can ask them questions. You can raise your hand and say, wait a minute, that didn't make any sense to me. And they can explain things. Then you've got tabletop activities that you do where you interact with the content. You get to talk with your peers and your colleagues at the table, ask questions of them, see if they've ever done standardization. And this all happens over a span of time of about 2.5 days, right? So it's got kind of a beginning and an end, and it's distinct. Then you leave and your 2.5 days is over and you're kind of on your own after that. I mean, you still could reach out to some folks, but for the most part, you've got the materials that you left with and then maybe email conversations that you would have with people. So for the asynchronous online course that we're developing, it's going to live on a learning management system. It's going to live on PathLore for those of you that have been in the system with FDA. That's their LMS. And it's going to use graphics and different videos of different things and interviews with people who have faced challenges and been successful, as well as have these kind of formative assessments along the way called knowledge checks. They're not graded, so it's not like it's a pass-fail. And these are not going to have a summative assessment at the end for the most part. We're still kind of in conversations about the verification auditor pieces, just because those have kind of a different level of needing to be able to understand what you're looking for. So we want to make sure people get that right. But as far as a summative assessment for the self-assessments, we aren't putting those together. We're using those knowledge check pieces as formative assessments for folks as they're going through the content. It's going to have live tables and interactives inside the course that you'll be engaging with as far as the content goes, and the forms and things like that. And there's no number on the number of no limit on the number of people who can participate in the course, right? So in a face-to-face, you kind of have a limit because people are only able to engage with so many people at one time. You can't have a room full of 200 people or we lose engagement. So the cool thing about the asynchronous online course is it doesn't matter. And it's, to how many people are in there. As many people as want to take it can take it. And it can be delivered on demand. which is great. Whenever you have time, you can get in there, do a little bit, and then come back out. And that it can be really helpful. So like I was saying, some of the benefits, you know, in a face-to-face, you've got live people there. So when you don't understand something, you can ask a question and get clarification. And that's always a big benefit. And you can learn from people who've already done it. You know, what challenges did you face? What successes did you have? What should I make sure that I do? And then that networking piece that Christl had mentioned that they've managed to work out in the virtual trainings that we do, but that's because they're actually face-to-face. In an asynchronous environment, you don't have anybody there with you. You're taking it by yourself. You're kind of on your own. But like we say, you know, the benefits of the asynchronous online course is that it's always there. So if you don't have time to finish the whole thing, you can go in, you've got half an hour, you can get through a little bit of content and then come back to it. You can review if you don't understand something. You can go back, you can click back a few slides and say, wait a minute, I just read that, but now it's saying this. I don't understand how those two things go together. So you can just kind of back up, read it again, and go back. And it's all in your own time. So when you've got time to do it, you can get in there and do it. And it doesn't have to be that you take 2.5 days and you don't, you know, you can't work or whatever. You got to focus. You can focus when you've got the time to focus, which is nice. So lots of people are working together to create these courses, both on NEHA's side and on the FDA side. So it's not like there's just one person who's taking all this content and putting it together into a course and sending it out into the ether. There is lots of iterative reviews that are going on at different stages in the creation of it, whether it's, you know, at the text level where people are just reading through and checking the clarity and the accuracy of the content, versus at the course level where we've actually put things together and kind of the spit and polish of it. I mean, there's just all kinds of levels of review of folks at NEHA and at FDA that are doing this. So I wanted to give you a little snapshot of some of the graphics. We have decided to go at it as kind of, think of it like you've got some friends along with you, right, that are going to help you on this path. And so this is our characters that have been created as the self-assessment leader, and that's Sal, and the verification auditor part of it, and that's Val. So Sal and Val kind of show up repeatedly throughout the course to kind of cue the participants as they're going through the content. Oh, okay, that's Sal. So I'm in the self-assessment part, and they're talking about self-assessment. Oh, there's Val. Val's here to teach us how to do verification audits. And I don't mean to, I'm not going to make it sound, you know, childish, if for lack of a better term, but we're using humor, just like Christl said. When you have fun in a course, you tend to remember things a little more. So we've done our best to kind of insert things that help with engagement. So Sal and Val were kind of our idea of how to lead people through and keep folks engaged in the content. There's other graphics, obviously, throughout the course, and each one of the standards has its own, what we're calling wayfinders. So, for example, in this graphic, so the graphic is kind of demonstrating what's in the content of the slide, but we're also showing another example of the graphics here where we have, for each standard, they have their own wayfinder. So we have Sal and Val that are leading you through the self-assessment and the verification audit pieces, but then they meet up with these wayfinders, and they're different for each standard, so that when folks get into it, like standard 2 has a different look of the wayfinder than standard 6, for example. So when you pull it up, you're like, oh, I remember, it's the little blue lady with the red glasses. She's the one who's doing, you know, standard 2, that kind of thing. So it's just kind of a tool, you know, almost like a mnemonic, but not exactly, to help folks remember where they are and kind of orient themselves in the content. We've also got these pop-up tables. So the next few slides are animated, and they're going to show a little bit of the interactive with how the slides are going to be created. So they're not all, they don't all have characters on them. Some of them we're just walking you through, because the goal really is to help people understand how to fill out these forms. Of course, my phone's going to ring when I'm doing a course. So it's really to help people fill out these forms and figure out what it is they're supposed to be doing. So on the pop-up tables, we've created these focus areas to get people's attention. So this is the animation, just to kind of show you everything. And then you'd get to move on to the next slide after that. So then the second thing that I had mentioned is these knowledge checks, right? So with the knowledge checks, they're formative assessments that are trying to tie in the learning objectives to the content that the people are really focusing on as they go through the course. So these knowledge checks, I'll click the animation. You get 2 tries. You know, you go in, you submit, you're like, not quite right. Second try, try again. This time you got it great, got it right. So it also gives the answer below. So if it had been an incorrect answer, it still would have kind of given them a little bit of remediation there about, well, you still didn't get it, but here's the correct answer and here's why. We also have interactive tables. So there's places where people can actually interact with the tables inside the course. So I'll give you a little animation here so this one can get going. So here you would actually have to go in and make some choices and interact with the table before you would be able to go on. And if you answer incorrectly, then it's going to ask you to go back and try again. So same kind of thing, except, you know, with this one, it's an interactive that you've got to interact with the table, not just a pop out that kind of shows you where to focus your attention. You've actually got to do something. And then we've also got interviews with folks who have gone through the standardization process and have some, you know, insights for folks that could help them out. We did this to try and get at that richness of the face-to-face course that we lose when we're in an asynchronous environment, because usually you get to have conversations with people at the table. In an asynchronous online course, you don't get to do that. So we tried to figure out, we used some of the information from FDA to create kind of prompts for folks to be able to talk about it. So, and each one of the courses, sorry, I'm just module, chapter, course, you know, each one of the courses has many of these interviews within it so that we can try and get out again those pieces that would have been conversations at your table if you were at the face-to-face course. And then they asked me to kind of tie it into how this relates back to the flexible funding model. So as Art was talking, I added the title, Track 3, the maintenance and advancement piece, because that is really where the self-assessment and verification audit courses would probably be the most help, because there's 3 stages of funding in that Track 3 of maintenance and advancement. If you're working towards meeting a standard, then that would be a continuous improvement grant that you would go for, right? And you could use those funds to help you work towards meeting that standard. If you've already met a standard, but you haven't done your verification audit yet, there's the conformance stage that you could apply for, and that's a different amount of money, but that helps you get through that verification audit step. And then if you've already met the standards and you just want to keep meeting the standards and there's some maintenance things you need to keep doing, then you go for the maintenance stage of the flexible funding model funding. And that's where we thought that probably that the courses would be of the most benefit to you, is when you get into this Track 3 of the maintenance and advancement of the RFFM. And that's it for me. So I'll hand it back over to Art at this point. Actually, maybe Mike.
All right. Thank you, Sharon, for that. And clever. It's the first time I've seen the characters. So thanks for all your work on that front. I'll just get into really how this looks within the grants management system. If you are looking to apply for funding, again, the main website is going to be that neha.org/retail grants. And from there, right now, we just opened up for registration today. And Art, feel free to grab this if the screen is looking a little bit off. But yeah, on the main website, that is neha.org/retail grants. As we mentioned, the registration opened today. So this is where you can go ahead and get in there and create that account. You won't receive a username and password until the 9th of September. So about a week from now, we'll be emailing those username and passwords. But on the 9th, you'll be able to log in and begin those applications. So let's jump into that right now. We're going to get into a live demo. So again, all of this is accessed from that main neha.org/retail grants website. And let's just, get in and see if we can actually show you how the system looks in a live demo here.
All right. I'm going to go, Mike, into this is what you'll see if you log into the portal with your credentials. You have a little bit about understanding how, if you should be in track 1, 2, or 3. But let's
Art,
say
you actually may need to switch applications.
Oh, okay. It looks like it's sharing on my end. Let me try. Stop share again. How's that? Better?
There we go.
All right. Yes. And Mike, take it away. That's why you weren't describing it. Now I get it.
Yeah. Thanks, Art, for pulling that up. So this is, once you have a username and password, this is going to be the main screen that you'll see once you access the grants management system. You know, on the left-hand side, really looking up at that upper left-hand corner, you'll see just sort of a program overview, the different tracks and the eligibility requirements of each track. From there, if you go into any of those, sort of apply now tracks, then we can get into sort of the training applications from there. Again, this will show each user, at that point, who's eligible for which tracks, and now it gives you the ability to apply for those different grant programs. But scrolling down to the training application, you'll see all of the eligibility information right there. We'll get straight in. One bit of advice here, and I'll show this slide here in a bit, but save your work and save it often. The biggest thing that we have, little technical hiccups, the internet connection drops, really briefly. So save your work and save it often. And really just at the top of the application is just sort of high level information. We're capturing your name, your organization, the authorizing official, which is explained in the grant guidance, and then really into 3 eligibility questions just to verify that you are in fact eligible for this training application. The secret answer to this is yes to all of them. And from there, you're going to click on Save and Continue. That will open up the rest of the application. The nice thing about these are very straightforward, very streamlined, one-page applications. So you're not going to be scrolling through pages and pages of documents. What you see is what you get. And the best, the best thing possible is really just answer those questions in sequential order. So Art's, demoing, some of these things right now, including the eligibility tracks. Be sure to select that based on the base grant application that you've applied for, and that will open up the different questions, for you. So from there, sort of main concept with your project, the project title, going down to project lead, and then who's a part of your team, completing those form fields, again, sequentially in there. And then, those project qualifications. Based on your grant, don't forget, to select the project period of performance. And then as we get down, really starting to get into the nugget, the meat of this is really selecting those courses that are available. Many of them are pre-selected. You can select directly from that form field and really find the course that you like, highlight it, and then just drag it across, as Art's demoing right there. You can select multiple courses. If you get confused or you change your mind, you can always revert back and move that course back to the left-hand menu. But anything you have selected on the right-hand side, that will populate form fields below, and then you'll just be responding and answering to those questions that appear. Again, be really detailed, as Art mentioned. The specifics matter here. That will really help the reviewers and thus the success of your application as it travels through the review process. Awards we intend to make probably in February, and we'll speak to that. Again, my key advice, save your work and save it often. Don't forget the budget section at the bottom. This is where all line items will be itemized. It opens up another window. As Art's mentioning, again, just high-level information there. And then we have some pre-populated line items, but also plenty of blanks. So if there are additional expenses that you have that aren't listed pre-itemized. Go ahead and fill in the name of those. Again, specificity matters, and then enter the dollar amount in there. And then at the very bottom of this same budget worksheet, there's a budget justification. And this is where you can include any text, any information that you'd like for the reviewers to consider as they're looking through the rest of your budget here. You'll save this form. It'll populate directly within the application itself. You can revisit that. If you need to, you can edit it up until the point that you submit your application by clicking on that edit button there. You can also delete it there if you need. There's a couple of little questions at the bottom. Remember, the amount requested should match your budget worksheet. So just verify that before you finish out. There's some final clicks at the bottom, but then it's save and continue, or save and close. And if you do save an application, you're not quite finished with it, or you want to revisit it, if you close out and go back to the main login page, that main landing page, once you log in, you'll see all of those applications on the left-hand side. You'll see them listed as draft until you actually submit those. You can get back in there, edit those, revise them, give them a second glance if you'd really like, and then save and close, and then you finally submit. It is a two-step process. Once you're done, save it first and then submit it. Once you submit it, you'll again see that completed application, that submitted application on the left-hand menu, and it'll be locked from any edits at that point. We'll have our information. Thanks, Sharon, for including our email address and phone information in chat. We'll also highlight that again a little bit towards the end of the presentation. But as we flip back over to the slides, just a couple of things, as I've mentioned, if I haven't said this or been clear, save your work and save it often. Use those save and continue buttons if you want to save, but continue in that process of the application. If you've made some changes and you want to save it and now close out and exit and maybe come back another time later, that's where that save and close button would be. Important dates to remember. Don't forget, September 9th, that's when the grant portal opens for those applications. In the meantime, over the next week, you can in fact register, get that basic information. So on day one, you can hit the ground running with your username and password. Those will be emailed to you on September 9th if you get it in between now and that date. The grant portal will be open for about 2 months. It will close around 8 p.m. Eastern, 7:59 p.m. Eastern time on the 15th of November. At that point, no new applications will be submitted. And then we're targeting early February for those awards to be made and the project period to begin. And then right now it's projected that the end of the calendar year, December 31st, for those one-year grants will be when the completion is. With that, Art, I'll turn it back to you.
And I'll turn it back to Laura, I think, who's going to moderate any questions we have.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so very much. Thank you to all the speakers, and a special thank you to Mike Turner for jumping in and navigating us through the portal. We hope that this webinar provided you some information on the retail flexible funding model, how to get into the portal, what you can use funding for specifically for education. And then we really wanted to provide you some background on education that we can provide and ways you can use that funding. So I'm really happy to have all the speakers on today to share that with you. At this time, if there are any questions, we would love to answer them. You can put them in the Q&A box. I don't see any questions on the board, but if there are any questions, we'll just give it a couple of moments for some questions. Any thoughts from the presenters? Anything else that you would like to share with our audience as we wait for a few questions?
You know, one thing I thought of during Sharon's presentation is she directed you all towards track 3, but I almost think she undersold how great that workshop is. I think no matter where you are, you'll get the most bang out of it with track 3, but I think it's really helpful for track 1 if you've never done anything with the standards before, and track 2 if you want to make moderate progress. Sharon, any thought? Does that make sense to you as well?
Yeah, for sure. I agree with you completely. But it has the most bang for the buck at that track 3, but you're right.
Yep.
Anytime you're wanting to learn anything about the standards and kind of how the process will work would be a great time to hop in there, which is the cool thing about the asynchronous course is that it'll be available and you guys can go in whenever you need the information. I did want to point out that Rance put in the chat, I forgot to mention, we're trying to get 2 face-to-face workshops scheduled right now with FDA. They haven't landed on locations yet, nor definite dates, but Rance put in kind of the fuzzy place where we're trying, like end of February, sometime in early March, and then around the AEC that we do in the summer in July. So, or maybe this next coming year, it might be in June. I can't remember, but just, sometime early in the year, sometime kind of in the middle of the year for 2022.
And
So
just following up
Rance.
on that, Sharon, we are going to be posting the grant guidance on the website within the next day or so. And also within the next day or so, we're going to be posting a standalone, about a 2-page list of some of these retail courses, including all the dates and locations we know about. The workshops will be up there eventually, but as soon as this posts, it's going to talk about where, the AFDO conference is, where NACHO is, where the Food Safety Summit is, what time of year. So we're trying to do everything we can to help you get that specificity for your grant applications.
Great. And that reminds me that this webinar is going to be posted on the Food Safety Education Month webpage for NEHA. That's how you registered for it. You went onto our site and clicked register. So thanks for all the attendees today. So it'll be memorialized there if you would like to reference this and get some more information at a future time. I don't see any questions on I do see a question actually that came in. Art, where will the info be posted? Maybe we can get a link to.
Yeah, that's all at the neha.org/retail grants. And actually, I'll pull that up. And if there's other questions, that we'll just kind of show that what that's going to look like. I think we can do that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Please feel free to share.
All right. So
I want to point out too that Rance put a question in there of when the online course is going to launch live on Pathloor. There's been conversation about whether or not we're going to roll it all out at once all of the standards are done, or if we're going to roll them out as they are done and approved. And so Rance kind of put me under the flashlight there because he needs to speak up, because I can't remember, of course, because I'm nervous, and he put me on the spot. I'm nervous and I can't remember what exactly we finally decided. So I believe that we are going to be rolling out the courses for the standard, starting with the intro and administrative module. When it's finally all finalized, will be the first one to come out. And then I believe standard 2 will come out together with that. So they're going to kind of come out in order of priority that FDA decided based on the number of folks who tend to go for the standard. So standard 2 is going to be the first one that comes out.
Awesome. If
I remember correctly. And Rance says I'm correct. So good.
Right.
So every few months we should be rolling some out is kind of the idea, is that it'll be a rolling, rollout for the courses.
Awesome.
So
I'll show you a little bit on the website, but if you go to the neha.org main site, right up the top, you have this little click for retail grants. That takes you to the homepage. And over here is where you're going to find most of the information. Again, how to enroll. I talked about action 4, completing your comprehensive strategic improvement plan. But if you go to program resources and you look under training, actually, you know what? We already have what we have posted. So if you under training and courses, go under 2022 retail training options, you will find, I'm sorry, this is the generic information. No, this is the specific. So if you scroll down, some of the face-to-face workshops and conferences we expect for 2022, and it's got locations, dates, and then it's obviously got some TBDs that will be populated throughout the open grant period. We're working as hard and fast as we can to get firm dates, because the more, again, you can't be specific unless we're specific. So we're working very hard with FDA to get that updated.
All right, great. Thank you for sharing that. And it looks like Taryn put a link to that in the chat. I don't see any other questions on the board, so I'm going to bring up a couple of our more final slides here. I do want to mention that this is the kickoff webinar in our National Food Safety Education Month webinar series. So our next webinar is going to be Tuesday, September 7th from 2 to 3. We're going to be talking about cannabis. So a hot topic right now. Our speakers are Kara Laveau and Kara Cronkite. And you can go to the National Environmental Health Association's website on Food Safety Education Month to register for that. So with that, I want to sincerely thank all of our panelists or our speakers today, Christl and Art and Sharon and Mike. Thank you so much for sharing your information with us during National Food Safety Education Month. Keep a lookout, all of our audience can keep a lookout for the webinar recording that will be up on the website. And I hope all of the attendees stay safe and well out there. Thank you so much for attending this session, and I hope everyone has a great day.